I'm here this afternoon with David Huber, also here in Belton, Texas. David, what did you witness as far as voters, American citizens, having a challenge being able to vote on March 1st?
Well, as part of Molly White's campaign team, I was at the polling place in Rogers during Election Day, and I was out there holding signs. I got to, witness everybody that came in and voted, and I believe around 4:30, 4:45, somewhere around that time, the polling place in Rogers ran out of ballots. I saw, multiple people drive up, go inside the building, and then about an hour later, I was like, wow, they're still not coming back out. And then I found out that, they had ran out of ballots and they were waiting for those to come in. So there was quite a line that built up in this pretty small town because there was very large voter turnout.
Did they ever get a chance to vote? Did the ballots ever get delivered to them that you're aware of?
I believe that the ballots did eventually get delivered. I had to end up leaving that location around 6:30, 6:45. And at that point, there was still people waiting in line to vote. No, actually, I take that back. It was probably around 7 o'clock when I left. And I don't know this for sure, but I was told by someone who had gone in to vote that they did extend the time. They said, it's probably going to take 30 minutes to get ballots here, so we'll let people stay extra 30 minutes. But I did see some people go in to vote and then walk back out and leave because they couldn't wait that long. And a couple of those people I did notice came back later to vote. There were some others that I never saw return. So there were some people who came in, tried to vote, and they couldn't stay for 2 hours in line, so they ended up leaving. So that's basically what I saw personally. Is people in Rogers who they couldn't wait 2 hours, and so they had to leave.
Yeah. Are there any stories in particular that you heard of other incidences that occurred in the area?
Well, I know there was many different locations that ran out of ballots, and at most of those places, people did end up having to stay in line. I know there were some people in Troy that ended up not voting. I heard that in Morgan's Point, which was precinct 104, there was a huge line that built up, and there was a good number of people there that I was told got turned away because, it was just too late, or I don't know what all the reasons were, but they ended up not being able to vote at all.
Wow. Doesn't sound like America, does it? Or Texas even.
Not really. I mean, if you show up to vote, we should provide a way that you get your voice heard.
That's right.
And, if you don't show up on election day, if you don't show up before 7 o'clock to vote, that's on you. But if you do show up and the election administration just has failed and doesn't have ballots there for you, then that's their problem. That's not yours, and they should do everything to remedy that.
That's right. You mentioned that you worked with Molly Kreiner's campaign. I understand that was somewhat of a challenging race, that there were different incidences that happened. Is there anything that you'd like to share along that line?
Now, are you talking about Molly White's race?
Oh, Molly White. Sorry.
Okay.
We have Molly Kreiner in San Angelo. Forgive me.
Okay, so
Thank you.
But yes, I was her campaign manager. One of the big incidents that happened on it was a Friday. It was the last day of early voting. This has actually involved me personally. All week, the Shine campaign and the Molly White campaign have been out at the Temple Annex, which is where early voting was taking place at Temple. And there was a spot on the sidewalk directly across from the entrance to the building where Mr. Shine would always get there earlier than I, and he would place his little canopy right there so that voters could see him as they were coming in and out. And so on the last day of early voting, I told myself, well, hey, why not get up extra early, go down there and put up my canopy right across from the door so people can see me, and maybe I'll get there before he does in the morning. So I drove down there. It was around 6 o'clock in the morning. And yeah, he wasn't there yet, so I went ahead and set up my canopy right there across from the door. And at that point, I still hadn't had any breakfast. I needed some coffee, and so I was getting back in my car to leave right when he drove up. And so he looked a little bit agitated when he noticed that I had put my little canopy tent right where he had normally placed his. But I didn't really, want to cause any more issues there, so I just drove off. But then the thought occurred to me, well, what if he does something to it? And so I drove around the block and looked over, and it looked like he was maybe messing with it or moving or something. I couldn't quite tell, it was still dark. So I drove back around, pulled into the parking lot, and he had pulled my canopy pretty far down the sidewalk, far away from the door. And so, I was upset about that because I was like, well, he doesn't have a right to this sidewalk, and he's messing with Molly White's property here. He's moving something, and he doesn't have a right to do that. So I pulled out my cell phone and was just, going to take a little bit of video just to document the fact that he had moved my canopy. And so I videoed that, and then I videoed him setting up his zone right where we had ours. And so I was a little upset at him, but I really didn't want to confront him and make like a big issue out of it. And so I waited there maybe 5 minutes or so just to kind of cool down, make sure I wasn't going to yell at him or anything like that. And so then I thought, well, I should at least say something to him about this. So I drove up and I had my window rolled down, and I said, hey, you might consider not moving my setup here. And it was just a calm voice, and you can see that in the video. But at that point, he got really upset, and he had one of the legs to his canopy in his hand. So he was holding that, and he comes running towards my car, and he's like, hey, you know what? You better get out of here, and you better get out of here real quick. And he actually stuck that leg inside of my car through the open window, and I thought he was going to hit my face. And
wow. Whoa.
I just drove off because, I didn't know what was going to happen.
Self-defense.
And yeah, so that canopy leg ended up hitting my car, and I was hoping it didn't get scratched up, which it didn't, but you can see that in the video. So I drove off and eventually, called Molly, and we called the police to come out and get a report, and, they didn't want to file any sort of report. So I ended up, I went back later and asked them about it, and they said, no, we still can't do anything. So I filed one online because, I just wanted to document, what had happened in an official report. So that's basically what happened, and, I was really surprised by it. I'd been out there with him all week. I didn't think that was anything that was going to happen at all, but it ended up happening, so I was surprised, shocked, and, we just, after that, we just let everyone know what had happened, just so people could be informed. And that's basically what happened about that situation.
Of course, I don't live in the area, but things I saw posted on Facebook and all were comments about Molly's signs disappearing and being moved and things along that. Is that correct?
Yes. Now, every election cycle, you do end up having some of your campaign signs disappear, and you're not really sure where they went or who took them.
True.
We had some extra, I guess, some particularly interesting things happen with Molly's signs. One example I can think of, we placed it on this property where the day or so before, I had called the owners and asked them if we could put a sign. They said yes, that's completely fine. So I went out and put up a large campaign sign, and a couple days later, Molly goes driving by. She's like, hey, David, I thought we needed a sign out there. I said, I already put a sign there. So she went back and she's like, oh, yeah, it's on the ground. So I went out to look at it, and somebody had clipped the ties, pulled it down, took out like a permanent marker and wrote, shame on you, you don't have owner's permission to put it here. And so I was like, You don't know what you're talking about. I did talk to the owners, so I just, put the sign back up. Then I think the next day it was down again. So I called the owners. I was like, you said we could put our sign here, right? And they said, yeah, that's completely fine. We don't know what's going on. So I put it back up. We stuck a game camera out there to see if we could figure out what was going on. And after that, nothing happened to it. But we had another sign downtown Belton where it got ripped down a couple of times, and ended up just moving it across the street. But there was also, I don't know for sure that this happened because some other person on a different campaign told me about it, but he said that some of his campaign signs and some Molly White signs were found thrown over a bridge on Highway 36. So I don't know for sure if that happened, but we did hear that our signs were being thrown over a bridge.
Wow.
And I don't know where they came from or who was doing that. So.
Life on the campaign trail.
Yeah.
Goodness.
People get, really into their candidate and they can do some crazy stuff.
Apparently so. Is there anything else in particular, David, that you would like to share in regards to, I guess mainly the voter situation of not being able to vote and how that's impacted everything and any feelings that you've heard out in the community from it?
Well, I did hear a lot of reports about people not being able to vote and some people being turned away. And, that concerns me because I think everyone has a right to have their voice heard. And now I feel like, we did end up gaining probably 600 votes on election day. So it's possible that, some of those people that turned away could have swung the election over to Molly's side.
True.
I don't know that could happen because it was split pretty much evenly down the middle. So, the people turned away were probably also Shine supporters, as well as Molly White supporters. So we can't say for sure that that would have changed the election, but it does concern me that these people weren't given the opportunity to vote at all.
Right. They didn't get to vote for president or any of the other state offices or local offices. It impacted a lot of people. Were there any other races in your area here that were also a close race besides just Molly's in the end result?
There were a couple of fairly close races, but for the most part, none of them were as close as Molly White's race.
Okay.
And it was, 100 votes, but that was less than a percentage of, the people that voted, because we had over 19,000 people vote for those two candidates.
Wow. Yeah, for sure. David, I appreciate your time very much today. Thank you for your input.
Oh, you're welcome. And actually, I just remembered, there was one other thing that you might find interesting. We did end up having a recount because it was so close. And during the recount, we found out that in one of the precincts, I believe it was 105, which was Little River Academy, they opened up, it was at my table, I was a poll watcher just watching them count. They opened up the ballot box, and there was this whole stack of ballots in there that, it was unorganized. It had Republican, Democrats, the ballots were flipped all over the place. They weren't emergency ballots, these were actual ballots from early voting. And the election administration had no idea how they got in there or why they were there, but these were ballots that had never been counted at all. And so, they were not counted until the recount, and it was over 100 ballots.
So that affected other races as well, too.
Yes, so without that recount, those ballots would have never been counted at all.
Wow. I understand Sean Snyder is the election administrator here in Bell County.
Yes.
Is he new to the position, or?
I don't actually know the answer to that.
Okay. All right. Well, good input. I appreciate it very much.
I appreciate
Thank you,
taking
David.
the time to do these interviews.
Thanks.